Hey everybody, welcome back to the Woodworking Talk Show. By the way, if you want a whole different experience of the Woodworking Talk Show, and really, who among us doesn't? I'd like to invite you to follow this show in its podcast form over on Spotify, or even one of those weird podcast platforms. You do a podcast, Chris. Do you ever look through like where people are downloading it and see all the different places, all these different platforms?
Yeah, we have a little bit. I'll say it's getting better, but podcast analytics are way different than YouTube analytics in terms of like the information that they give you. I don't even have that great of a read on how many people listen to it, if I'm honest.
It's frustrating because you don't get a lot. It's a whole different game because I do a different podcast that's just about YouTube, and you don't get comments, you don't get responses,
right.
All you get is basically one metric, how many downloads you get. And so it's really hard to gauge it. But I notice when I'm going through there, I see these like platforms like Deezer and like iHeartRadio, and I don't know why do people listen to all that, but I don't know. I guess they like it. Who knows? Yeah,
like I was always just like listening on the Apple one, and then I recently switched to now I listen to them on Spotify just because
it's on Spotify now.
It seems like it's a little better at keeping track of like, here's what you've been listening to, resume this one. Although now I think Apple stepped up their game because of that, but yeah, I guess it was too late.
Yeah, I just wish Spotify would have some sort of interaction you could do. Just leave a channel review or something. I don't know.
Like all the actual interacting with listeners ends up just taking place, through DMs or whatever on Instagram, it seems like. Yeah,
it's frustrating. Anyways, just search for the Woodworking Talk Show wherever you happen to listen, even if it is one of those weird platforms. And this is now the #1 woodworking podcast.
Whoa.
Nah, I just totally made that up. So after 4 years of building custom furniture for clients, Chris Salomone, I'm sorry, is it Salomone or Salomone?
Salomone. It's like alimony with an S in front of it.
Gotcha. Chris Salomone of Four Eyes Woodworking turned his attention to YouTube in 2016 and right out of the gate established his quiet, relaxing style and highly polished cinematography with his very first video, Designing and Building a Modern Bench, Woodworking Projects, which has garnered almost 1 million views. That video is an amazing debut video for YouTube, really. His designs have a mostly modern style with clean lines and interesting, sometimes complex shapes. And it's clear that design is Chris's favorite part of the woodworking process. Even his own channel description says, "I love designing things and I tolerate building them."
Still true.
His project videos are lighthearted, well edited, and fun to watch, showing the entire process, including my favorite parts of your videos, or the animated Sketchup drawings, which really help a viewer to kind of visualize how an entire piece is going to come together. Do you use Sketchup or Fusion, or you do both?
I use Sketchup, and then Sean uses Fusion. So since both of our videos are on the same channel, you get a mixed bag depending on who took lead on that video. So yeah, for the ones that I'm doing, it's SketchUp with this, it's like a $20 plugin called Keyframe Animator.
Oh, okay. Oh, those are so cool though. I mean, they look fantastic. If there's, I'm getting off track here, but if there was one of those you would suggest to somebody who's just getting started getting interested in designing their own furniture, would you recommend SketchUp or Fusion 360?
I mean, if I'm being biased, I guess I would say SketchUp just because it's how I personally work better. But I would really say use both and maybe a couple others. Like I know I've tried using, I think it's called Shaper 3D, and it's mainly for the iPad. I would try them both and just see what makes most sense to you. I know like Fusion is technically probably a more powerful, better tool than SketchUp in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, somebody might be better with pencil and paper, which is less powerful than any software. That doesn't mean it's not as good. So I'd say whatever helps you get your ideas out is the one that you should use, and just, play around with each of them for an hour and then see which one you want to go down the path of.
I think it's worth having some sort of design system. Even if you're really good at drawing, do that, but do it. I think for me, it was a game changer when I learned how to do SketchUp, because it saved me so much time and materials and fussing around in the shop, just trying to get things to work out, just to be able to see, to model the whole thing ahead of time. I'll just literally take my own set of plans and just build them, like just wrote. Yeah.
Yeah. It's exactly what I do. Like I even think that I probably wouldn't have gotten into woodworking had I not found SketchUp. That was kind of my entryway into getting into it. I found SketchUp. I started playing around with it, started designing furniture eventually, and then wanted to see if I could build it.
Nice.
I don't know if I would have ever gotten or even had an inkling of an interest in it if I hadn't found SketchUp.
Chris's videos include skits. You forgot I was still doing this intro,
back
right?
to the intro.
Chris's videos include skits and a few experimental projects, like a river table made out of crayons. That one was pretty cool. And another river table he made out of Legos. Yeah, I said Legos, not Lego.
Lego. They're gonna come after you.
And he gets introspective in some of his videos, such as his most popular video, I made a giant Nintendo Switch with storage for my video games, where he second guesses his own skills comparing himself to other popular YouTubers. I thought that was very poignant. Recently, he and his partner Sean doubled their workload by starting a second channel called Welcome to the Workshop. No, Welcome to the Wood Shop. Right.
Yeah. We went back and forth with that.
Yeah, I do the same thing all the time. With it has kind of a reality TV style format, showing the day-to-day shenanigans of a professional woodshop. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you mentioned that you kind of started in with SketchUp and design, and I saw your video. You have another second channel. You have a vlog channel, which I doesn't let you post to it too much anymore.
Yeah, that was early on. I thought I was going to do that, and then decided not to.
Everybody thinks they need a second channel when you first start on YouTube. Like, I got to do a second one. It shows off the real me. And then but you had a video on there showing you. It was one of your walk and talk videos, how I got into woodworking, and kind of it describes that whole process and how you didn't get into woodworking really for the love of woodworking. You started with the design philosophy, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it all goes back to that description on the header or whatever of I love designing, I tolerate building. I very much consider myself average at best at building things. So I think that's good in that I feel like if I can do it, you can do it. Having the ideas, maybe we're all at different skill levels on that, but when it comes to just building, there's nothing special about me. So the whole like tolerate building it, I always see it as once I've designed something, it's almost as good as it's ever going to be. And then as I'm going through the building process, I'm just doing my best to not mess it up along the way with, little slip ups here and there.
Do you find yourself ever adding anything to the project during the building process, or do you stick strictly to your design?
It's pretty rare. I might make like a little audible here or there, or if it is, honestly, it's probably because I messed something up and then I need to change a little bit. But I mean, the most that I do it is like the piece that I'm working on right now. There was a couple little edge details that I left to the last minute, and then I'm basically wrapping it up right now. The last thing I have to do is drawer fronts and doors, and I'm still not 100% solid on what I'm going to do for the pool. So it's very minor stuff. Other than that, all the dimensions are laid out, all the angles. I know basically what it's going to look like in my head, and then it's just a matter of trying to translate that into a actual piece.
How much time goes into designing a piece of furniture? I know that's kind of a really wide open question, but I mean, kind of comparatively speaking, the amount of time it takes to build a project.
I would say now that time's gone up a lot for us, and that has to do with starting to sell plans, which we started doing about a year ago. And one of the reasons that we did that was we were just doing, 2 projects each a month, and trying to come up with 2 original designs when you've kind of painted yourself into this corner of having nicely well-designed pieces of furniture, whatever the right word is there, it had become kind of unsustainable, or it felt unsustainable long term. And it felt like we weren't getting to spend the kind of time that we wanted to on designing the piece. So, you'd do it from a macro level, but then you wouldn't get to drill down into all the little details that you'd like to include into a piece to really elevate it to that next level, or to try new things that you haven't tried before. And so then switching over to have one of our big focus be on plans has allowed us a lot more time to spend on those. So now, there'll be pieces that I spend 40 hours just drawing 30 different iterations of until I come to the one that I really like. And then obviously it still takes longer to build it usually, especially because you're filming it for a set of plans where you're trying to explain each little step and all the little tricks and everything that goes into it. But it's definitely gone up a lot. Whereas in the past it was, all right, I need to do this. I'll just spend maybe 4 hours, and that's as much time as I can, because now I got to get to work on it if I'm going to keep up with the schedule.
I just love the look of your designs, really. And I think do you think that you have developed a signature style?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but I wouldn't say that it's something that's all my own. Like when I see other people do something like it, I don't immediately think, oh my God, they copied my style, because I feel like my style is very derived from other things. It's basically
everybody's is really,
right.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's a lot of angles, usually kind of harder angles, geometric shapes.
Sleek. I think your furniture all looks very sleek. It doesn't look bulky or heavy ever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I always, and that's something I think about, I'll get comments like where people think it's too fragile or dainty or whatever. And I always design it just enough that it functions as a piece would. So, if it's a coffee table, I don't need it to hold 2,000 pounds. I need it to be able to hold 300 pounds, because it's not the kind of, yeah, exactly. That'd be a big mug of coffee. So as long as it can hold that, we're good.
Yeah. Yeah. You do a lot of coffee tables on you. I noticed you.
I did do a lot. Yeah.
You have a lot. Is that just, were you selling those? Is that why it was the appeal to that? Or is it just because that type of table kind of lends itself to good design?
I think it's just like where my head went with designing things a lot. And then because of the whole schedule thing, it's a piece that you can build relatively quickly. So if I have some kind of gimmicky idea like the Lego table or the crayon river table or whatever, it's a lot easier to do on a coffee table than a dining table. It's also a lot easier to find a home for it probably. And yeah, it was funny because ironically, I didn't even have a coffee table in my house until 3 months ago, just because little kids, they want to just like climb on it and jump on it. So I was like, well, we'll have a coffee table later. And luckily I'll have the experience of building like 30 of them by the time we get there.
Well, we just got new furniture for our living room last year or so, and it was a whole set. It came with a coffee table, and it just didn't feel right. It was like taking up so much room, and I moved it off, and it just kind of became this big side table between the two couches. And I haven't gone back. I'm just like so non-coffee table. I don't need a coffee table anymore. Yeah. I never realized I didn't need. I love that freedom of being able to jump up. I can jump on the floor and play with the cats and do stuff, and I don't have to, worry about walking around. I figure, well, we've got the end tables to set things on, so I don't really need that.
Yeah, it's one less thing to bang your head into when you're wrestling or something.
That's right. So were your designs initially all made or designed and built for clients? And do you still do that work?
Very rarely do I do it now, but to go back to that, initially it would have been, so the first thing that I ever designed on my own was, I call it the spider coffee table. I just made another version for a set of plans a couple months ago. And that was kind of for me and to test to see if I was able to build my ideas. So I did that. I found a woodworking, like a college course at a community college night class 2 days a week, and did that in there. Then after that, so the reason that I did that was to see if I liked woodworking and if I could do it. I did. And then I ended up plunking down a good chunk of change and turning our 2-car garage into my workshop. And I pretty much went all in right from the gate. I think I invested like $15,000 into, big table saw, planer, joiner. I wanted to go all in. And I felt like if I did that, that it would push me to get to the point of selling furniture. So then I spent that first probably 6 months just coming up with maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 pieces that I felt like were unique enough to me, and then put together a website, started selling stuff. And like, that was one of the things that pushed me into YouTube. Was I was basically building the same, 2 pieces. It seemed like took up 90% of the inquiries that I would get. And so I wasn't really getting any better. I was just doing the same thing over and over. And I was having ideas that I didn't have time to explore. All the furniture in my house was, prototypes of things. So it always was like kind of embarrassing to be like, oh, you're a woodworker. And I'd be like, oh yeah, well that was like the first thing I ever built. And
don't look at that one.
Yeah. None of the nice stuff it's like, the worst house on the street is the contractor's house, or what.
Right.
I know there's some saying in there. It was kind of that situation. So now in terms of taking on client work, it's very rare. It's, all of the stars have to align, where obviously my number one priority is making content, making plans, all that kind of stuff. So it does still happen. So for example, I built a desk for a set of plans about a year ago, a little bit less than that. And I had already planned to do it. This guy contacted me and I said, look, normally I would charge you X. I will charge you half of X, but it's going to have a long timeline and I get to make all the decisions on the design. And he's like, that's cool. So obviously, I said, I'll show you the design and then you can say like, no, I don't want that. And we can part ways. But those are the kind of like weird situations that have to work out for it to happen anymore, it seems like.
I got from that video on kind of your history of woodworking, and you mentioned you started in 2008. Same year I started YouTube, by the way.
Oh, nice.
But what were you doing before that? What kind of work were you doing that allowed you to kind of make this pivot into something so different?
So I was working at a library, a college library. I had my degree in business and I was going to go back and get an MBA. So I took the GMAT test, got accepted, was applying to classes, and we had just bought a house. And I was like, I don't think I really want to do this. I'm going to try something else in the meantime. So it kind of felt like I was just procrastinating. I thought like, I'm already late 20s at that time. I should probably focus on growing up more, but I want to try this thing. And so I didn't do it. And that's when I started just like kind of drawing stuff. And then it was probably about a year and a half until I took those night classes that I was talking about at the local community college. So then I started actually like, cutting wood and woodworking probably about 2010. And I'm thankful that I went down that path now, but it took a long time to become something that I could call a career. Even when I was selling furniture, it was more of just like a side thing. I'd kind of maxed out, I could only build maybe one, maybe up to like 15 pieces a year was about the max that I could do between that and working full time. So it was good. And it definitely taught me a lot about, the technical aspects of woodworking. It enabled me to reinvest the money that I was doing that and getting new tools so that I could, keep increasing in my abilities. And so it served that purpose, but then it really wasn't very career-ish or something that I could pivot fully into until starting YouTube and then several years into that.
Right. Did you grow up in California, or are you from, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Southern California. I've lived in a city called Whittier, which is like 20 miles outside of LA. Sure.
I noticed you always have the hat on. It always reminds me of Chicago Cubs. I don't know if that's not a Cubs logo.
Yeah, it is a Cubs hat.
Oh, it is a Cubs hat. Okay.
Yeah.
I always think it's just the C without the Cubs part in there. Are you a Cubs fan? I take it.
I'm actually not even a baseball fan. So the reason that I did that was when I started doing YouTube, because I was working full time, my builds would take me like 4 weeks. It'd be after work and weekends. And so I didn't want for every 30 seconds to have a costume change.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just going to wear jeans, a black t-shirt, and I'm going to get a hat. And I was like, okay, I like the Cubs hat. That's like a nice, plain, simple hat. My dad's from Chicago.
And it's
so I was like,
for Chris.
Exactly. And so I was like, okay, that'll be my uniform. And that kind of stuck for the first couple of years and now sticks from time to time.
You'd be surprised how many other woodworkers on YouTube I've talked to who kind of do the same. Are very concerned about continuity with their clothes.
Yeah.
Because woodworking is a long process.
Yeah.
And so, you glue something up and it's like, well, now I got to wait for either hours, even overnight.
Right.
But you come back and it's just jarring to see your clothes change. So I think we all just kind of have a lot of really, really dirty, stinky clothes that we wear for days on end,
Pretty much. You don't want to smell this hat.
Right. What was your inspiration there for starting a YouTube channel? Was it just to mostly promote the furniture and designs you were making?
No, it was really, that's where I had done the bulk of my learning, was a mix of that. And I would go on different forums. At the time, there was a forum called woodnet.net. I don't know if you remember that one.
Sure,
yeah. I always thought that name was funny.
Yeah, there was a lot of those forums back then.
Yeah.
I think the biggest one was Lumberjocks. I guess it's still
I remember
around.
that one too.
I don't know.
Yeah, so it was kind of a mix between asking questions those places, and then I need to see somebody do something to really understand it. So watching YouTube always had me interested in it. And so I continued to watch YouTube even after I had started making furniture. I would just watch it for entertainment still. And so I'd always wanted to do it. And my thinking was, okay, well, if I'm going to do it, I want to do something that's different, just because I don't want to just be another person doing the exact same thing in the space. I want to, whether it's better or worse, who knows? I just want to try doing something a little different. And so I had a background, like my other hobbies leading up to that had been music, recording music, a little bit of video editing and, filming sketches with my friends, that kind of stuff that you do growing up in high school and in college and stuff. So I thought, okay, well, I have those other skills. Maybe those were like my college courses into doing this thing. And maybe they can all culminate in this endeavor. And so I had just wanted to do it. I think I put my first video up in like March of, was it 2016? I don't remember now. No, 2016. And so the January before that, I just said, I'm going to stop taking orders. I'll fulfill anything that I have right now. And then I'm just doing YouTube, and we'll see how it goes.
And I mentioned it in the intro, but you kind of hit it out of the park on your very first video. I did. Just definitely knew
got
what
lucky,
you were
I feel
doing.
like, yeah.
Yeah. And you kind of established a style, which very few people do on their very first YouTube video, that kind of has sustained your channel for the whole time. How do you describe what your YouTube style is?
I think it's definitely evolved since then. So if I were to describe it in the beginning, a lot of it was, for lack of a better word, just like doing the opposite of what I thought was out there. If everybody else is zigging, I'm going to try to zag. And so I fully suspected or assumed that, when I started doing this, that if 200 people watched my videos, that'd be great. And I would just have to take my time and figure out how to do it, figure out how to get good at it. And, eventually if I keep making something good and learn how to make something good, that people will find me. But like I said, I feel like I got lucky, and right out of the gate, the first video did well. And, people on different podcasts thankfully saw it and promoted it and recommended it. And, then YouTube algorithm built momentum, or whatever happened. And right out of the, after the first week of it being up, I was like, okay, this is a thing. Like, I'm definitely, for as committed as I was, I'm going to double down on this. And so the style of it at that time, do you know Brian Eno music?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Ambient kind of music.
Yeah. Right. So I would listen a lot when I would go to sleep to this one album he has called Music for Airports.
Oh, yeah.
And I always thought like, oh, this would be really cool for like a how it's made type video or a woodworking video. So I kind of used that as my inspiration and recorded my own atmospheric track that was the soundtrack to that first video. Then after that, kind of pivoted, and my friend Chris, who's sitting next to me right now, would just do improvised guitar music, and that was the background for it. So it was still that kind of like calm, serene, talking about what I'm doing, but I also felt like I can only say so much about what I'm doing for so long. Like
it becomes too literal then,
Right.
Like,
I don't want to
I am driving a screw, it doesn't really
exactly. Yeah.
add
Like
anything.
Yeah, and especially the 60th time you do it after 3 years or whatever. So I was kind of conscious of that going in, as obviously I'm going to explain what I'm doing, but maybe not explain every little step. And then in those times when I don't need to, I'll either just let it chill out and be music and hopefully nice shots of, me cutting wood or doing whatever I'm doing. And then other times I can fill it in with, what I was thinking about to come up with this project or why I did something this way, as opposed to just how I'm doing it.
When you're building a project, are you kind of thinking about the script that you're going to be writing and using that to kind of dictate how you tell that whole story?
I would say at least subconsciously. And there's definitely times where it happens consciously, where, I will have an idea for a shot and what I'll do in the edit at that part. And I'd say I remember to do it maybe 50% of the time. I should probably go write those down when I have those ideas. But yeah, there's definitely an element to that. But more so, I would say it's just like making sure that I get a variety of different shots. Like, a lot of YouTube videos, and even mine probably, the bulk of the shot you're going to see is the kind of, from belly button to top of the head, medium kind of shot. And so just being conscious to mix in a lot of tight shots, obviously, but then even getting like really far away shots that would show me, from across the street in my garage, because I thought, well, maybe that's somebody that they can relate to that, like seeing the setting that I'm in or whatever. So in the beginning, it was just overshoot and then figure it out. And I would probably, I would shoot 200 shots and maybe 80 of them would make it into an edit. Now I've probably gotten a little bit more efficient where it might be 100 shots and 80 of them make it into the edit. So I have a better idea of what I will actually use, and I can, save a little bit of time that way. But I would say more so than having like a clear vision, it's more just like, let's just get a bunch of stuff and then I'll figure it out when I'm editing.
It's all in post, right?
Yeah. I mean, that is like the other half of the creativity.
Do you do the shooting yourself, or at least still?
Yeah, it's pretty much me for any of those kind of videos. Like I was saying, my friend Chris, who's sitting next to me now, he recently started working alongside us. And so he's doing all of the editing and video for the Welcome to the Woodshop channel. So a lot of that finds its way into our videos now, or at least has into the past 2 or 3. So I think that I don't see it ever getting to the point where the videos are, completely shot by him and drastically different than what they've been. But I like implementing a little bit of that, especially now, with Sean here also and the interaction that happens between us. It's a lot easier to capture that with a third person filming it, where it can be a little bit more dynamic. They can focus on where the action is happening because you don't know exactly where it's going to happen.
Do you think above all else, you're probably a storyteller, and really that's, I think, what is most appealing about your videos is that they're accessible to anybody, whether or not you've ever done any woodworking or have even the slightest bit of interest in woodworking. You make it very clear how the entire process works, which is why I like those animated SketchUp parts. They add so much to it. And so you give a little bit of a background, why you're wanting to do the project, kind of what inspired you to do it, how you're going to go about doing it, the implementation of it, the wrapping up, and then your kind of thoughts on it. But it's not in a YouTube-y style in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's what's very appealing. It's you're telling a full story on each video. I
mean, I will say my favorite comment type that I get is whenever anybody says, hey, I really like your videos and you're the one woodworker that I watch that, my kids will watch with me or my wife will watch with me or whatever. I'm like, okay, that, and that person is not into woodworking at all. And I think if I can get somebody who's not into woodworking at all to have any kind of entertainment from these videos, then that's good enough for me.
You mentioned in one of your videos that you use like cue cards. Is that right? You don't use a teleprompter?
I don't. So I fully write out the script. So I don't know, when you were in the beginning, obviously when you were doing the introduction, I'm sure you were reading something because you were getting all the stats and everything. But when you were talking about the podcast, you can listen to it in audio form. I could never do that off of the top of my head. I would just sound like a bumbling idiot. I do not have the personality to just like jump on camera and talk. Yeah. So I fully script out everything unless it's one of those impromptu moments where Chris is filming me and Sean goofing around.
Yeah, I started using a teleprompter 5 or 6 years ago, and man, did that speed up the process, because I found myself thinking, okay, these are the points I need to get across, and I would try to say them. I would have to say it over and over, and I would spend so much time shooting it. Where now all I have to do is just write the script, get that all organized. There's no ums and ahs. I'm not repeating myself, and just say it. But I tried doing like just some bullet points on a piece of paper, but that got really awkward because I felt like I couldn't look into the camera, and it was taking me just as much time. So I was just kind of wondering what exactly your technical process is.
How do you do it? Is it like an iPad that sits below the camera, or is it one of those things where it's like a two-way glass where the camera can see through it and then you...
Yeah, that's exactly it. I've got a DSLR, and so the camera just sits on this, it's like a 45-degree glass or something. And so I use my phone. I just set my phone on this little tray in front of it.
It just like projects it up? Yeah,
and the only thing is I need to be sort of close to it because I have to tap it to pause it. I have kind of a crappy system I use. But I think if you had like a remote, it would work better, or if you had a tablet. But, it's the system that works for me, and it speeds things up enormously.
I did use a similar system to that recently. I went and filmed some stuff with a brand, and they had like a full studio setup, so a lot more professional than what I have, and we were using that. But yeah, they had to have a third guy that was just basically scrolling through it at whatever speed I was reading.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because it stops, and it's just constantly changing the speed depending on your cadence and how well you're... At first,
it was nice, though.
It is so nice to have a teleprompter and just be able to speak to it. The trick with using them is to make it look like you're not really using a teleprompter, because a lot of people have a hard time just reading without it sounding like you're reading in that reading voice. And I like your voiceovers, though, because they just have you have a very soothing sound to your voice. It's real relaxing. Your videos are very, very zen.
Thank you. Yeah, I get that comment a lot. I think like a lot of them have moved away from it a little bit. I kind of see moving forward, especially so after we announced doing this new channel, I got a lot of comments from people that said, hey, I really like it. Totally different vibe. Fun to see you guys, being your more normal, casual selves. But I hope like you're not going to change going forward. And so I would say like, no, that style will really be for the other channel. And then going forward, I kind of see the videos fitting into 3 categories. So, maybe we'll have our kind of like really nice furniture pieces, and those will be the most closest to what we've always been doing. The production style, all that stuff will just be what it was, hopefully continue to evolve with adding in little new things here or there, but pretty much the same. Then you have your kind of tips videos where they're just information heavy. So they have to kind of be a specific way. Like, you don't want to be goofing around too much or going off track too much in those. And then a lot of our builds, which we've always done in the style of those nice furniture style builds, but we probably shouldn't, are the things that people aren't going to really build. Like it's more just for entertainment. So I think a good example of something we're working on right now is in the office right now behind me, you just see a blank white wall, but we're doing all these sound diffusing panels. And I think they're really specific to what we're doing. And if you actually wanted hardcore information on a sound diffuser panel, there's people that know way more about it than me that you should probably be getting that information from. So I would rather film that one in more of like a documentary, goofy, hang out with us while we do this style, because I think they lend themselves to it. Why get a super technical video for somebody that's not going to build it?
Right, because those will all have different audiences for the different types of videos. Right. I'm curious why you chose to put the new show. I like the content. It's interesting. It has kind of like that retro mid-2000s vibe, like The Office or something. Right. I guess that's what it most looks like, is TV. Right. And I'm curious why a separate channel. Why not just put that on your main channel?
I think the honest answer would be fear. Like, you have a certain thing that you've built, and then you think like, okay, well, what if sponsors quit coming to me? What if, my audience doesn't like it by having it on a separate channel. Now, if they don't, they have the choice not to watch it. And so it kind of like frees you up to be a version of yourself that maybe you wouldn't be on the regular channel, which is kind of sad to say in a way, but it's also kind of true.
I think that's why a lot of people do a second channel. But now I'm kind of more of the mindset of a channel looking more like an actual traditional TV channel, right? That has 4. Different shows, because I think people can watch different shows on that same channel and not abandon your channel. And I think, like there was a big conversation a few months ago when people started doing shorts. It's like, do you set up a separate channel for that? And my thought was just, well, the audience is already here. Why not just put it right here? And I would have never got the traction if I had set that on a second channel, I think, than if I just bring the audience that's already here, give them a chance to even watch it or not. You know?
It's something that we've definitely talked a lot about, you know, between the three of us here, and something that I've thought about a lot. And I would also say, like, honestly, it's not something that's completely out of the cards yet at this point. This is just where we're starting with it. So, like, I would say the most likely way that something like that could happen is something I definitely want to do. Let's say once we get about like 10 episodes into this other channel and we feel like we've like hit our stride of what this is, I would like to just put a video up on the 4 Eyes YouTube channel, just as another way to let people know we have this. If you like this kind of content, there's 10 other videos you can go watch right now that are uploaded. Have at it. If we did that and that didn't work, and you know, a year went by and it still wasn't really working that well, but let's say that the video that was on the channel, or maybe we do it 3 times, they were doing good. Maybe it is something that just gets incorporated into the regular 4 Eyes channel. Like, I don't want to say I think that's a bad idea and so I would never do it. It's just kind of the fear that pushed me into doing it that way initially, but that doesn't mean that's the way that it stays.
I bet it's totally exciting, though, working on a brand new thing like this.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I love it. I love having a new project like that. Yeah.
It's funny seeing, so like the first 2 videos we put up last week, they each have about 12,000 views. Whereas, you know, if I put a video up last week on 4 Eyes and it had 12,000 views, I'd be like, what the heck's wrong? Why is this bombing so hard? Whereas right now I'm excited about those 12,000 views.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It gives you a sense of freedom. I have another podcast that I do, and we talk to other YouTubers outside of woodworking and making. And we had a guest on there recently, Tiffany Ferguson, who just does internet analysis videos and talks about YouTube and the whole rise and fall of YouTubers, and how it's kind of like this thing that every YouTuber will peak at some point and then they come back down. And it's like, the question is, you know, what do you do when you're really not relevant the way you are? And one of the things that people do is A, start a second channel, and B, start a podcast. And so I'm thinking, wait a second, I think I started a second channel. I have a podcast now.
I've already done both too.
I'm at that flatline stage, but it's also kind of nice when you've been doing YouTube for a long time that you kind of get to that point where you're like, I don't really care if the numbers aren't up as much as they are, as long as the people watching it enjoy it. I'm pretty fine. Like, this show doesn't get a lot of views, but it's also an hour long, and people can listen to it on the audio version, which is probably a little bit easier.
And you put this on your regular channel, right?
Oh, yeah.
On YouTube?
Yeah. The only thing I wouldn't put on this channel is if it was completely outside of the bubble of woodworking. Like, you know, if I wanted to do movie reviews or something, which I have thought about doing, but I would do that on a separate channel, or on my vlog channel, which I do have a second channel, which occasionally I'll put things on there. But that was another
thinking for making it a separate channel. Even though it's called Welcome to the Wood Shop and it takes place, you know, the backdrop is us doing what we do and building furniture and all that stuff. My hope is that if it is successful, it really does branch out into an audience that isn't necessarily interested in woodworking. So I think a good analogy would be like the popularity of American Choppers or whatever it was called.
I was just going to mention that show. I love that show, and I never would have any interest in that.
Yeah, I would say most of it seems statistically impossible that the bulk of their audience was motorcycle riders. So
I've never even ridden a motorcycle in my whole life, but I loved watching that show.
Right.
Oh, you haven't ridden a motorcycle either?
Mm-mm.
Oh man, it's so rare for me to come across somebody like that. Usually I feel like I have to revoke my man card or something when I tell people I've never been.
Yeah, I think I'm like the unmanliest woodworker in a lot of ways.
Well, you do have the beard.
That's true. That's the one redeeming quality I have.
You look really tall. Are you tall? How tall are you?
About 6'2".
Oh, you look taller than that in your videos. I don't know why.
I under promise, over deliver. So maybe I'm 6'11". No, just joking. Maybe 6'3" early in the morning.
Well, it compresses throughout the day.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Your whole body just squishes down.
All that gravity.
What kind of videos do you think perform the best on your channel?
I mean, kind of the gimmicky type stuff, it seems like. I mean,
like the Nintendo, obviously, the Nintendo.
The crayon tables, that kind of stuff. I would say the things that consistently perform the best, though, are just the nice pieces of furniture. And if you told me you have to get rid of everything except for one thing, that's what I would keep, because that's what I like doing the most. Yeah. But that's another thing, is like going back to the different style of videos. That Nintendo video, for as well as it's performed, I feel like I could have gotten so much more out of it if it were less technical, because very few people are going to build that.
The thumbnail alone is like enough.
Right. It's just like a sensational thing or whatever. So if that video, instead of being, I don't even know how long it is, a 10-minute video that's more in the style of my normal 4 Eyes video, if that video would have been a 7-minute video more in the style of a welcome to the wood shop video, I think people would have loved it a lot more, and maybe it would have done even better, or at least, you know, if that served to bring people over to this other kind of content that we also make, it would have been a different type of show that people could have enjoyed, rather than, you know, most of the people, I got to imagine if it has 7.9 million views, that 7.7 million of those people would probably hate the rest of my videos, because they're like, I'm not into fine furniture and woodworking from a technical point of view.
Right, exactly. If you were going to start like a third woodworking, or not woodworking, YouTube channel that was completely unrelated to woodworking, what would you do?
What would you be
passionate about enough to start a channel?
I mean, I love sneakers, but I don't know if I could start a whole nother channel to that. Honestly, the thing that I like most is like goofing around with my friends, which is kind of what Welcome to the Wood Shop is, but maybe something that was a little more, like had a theme to it, a running theme where there was some kind of springboard for comedy that we could do. So it'd all be more like a video podcast. I'm not sure exactly what that would be, but it'd be something in that realm that just afforded me an hour a week that I know we're just going to goof off and film it, and hopefully something good comes from this.
Did you ever think about starting a music channel?
Yeah, we've actually talked about, I have a few different ideas for kind of podcasty type stuff that's based off of music. Like actually the other day, me and Sean were both out working in the workshop, and I said, hey, we should like listen to the same album at the same time. And something that, you know, there's always those bands or those albums that you should have listened to, but for whatever reason, you just never did. Yeah. So one like that for me is Pearl Jam. Like, you know, I heard their hits or whatever when I was in 5th grade, but then I never dug any deeper into it. And so I know Vitology is one of their more popular albums. I said, let's both just listen to that. And then meanwhile, Chris, he was very into that album. So I thought like, oh, that might be a cool segment to do, where you have one person that they have this album that means a lot to them, and then these other 2 or 3 people that never really gave that album a listen, spend a week, listen to it, you know, 3-5 times, whatever, and then have a discussion about that.
That's awesome. That's a
yeah, something like
idea.
That could be fun, or some variation of that.
I always get that when there's like something that was very popular, and somehow you didn't listen to it or you didn't hear it, and you tell that to somebody, and then they get this shock. How could you not have known this? How could you not have? And I always have kind of the opposite reaction. I always think, I kind of envy you in a way, because I wish I could hear this again for the very first time. And same with movies. You know, if somebody's like, you've never seen, you know, The Godfather or something, how could you not have ever seen it? I'm like, well, man, it was so cool. I would love to see this with you.
I remember telling my wife one time, hey, if I ever like lose go into a coma and then wake up and don't remember anything, make sure you show me these albums so I can experience them again for the first time.
Right.
That'll be the one benefit.
I find myself listening to music today. I listen to mostly like just modern music. I don't listen to a lot of older music. It always takes me a couple times through an album before I like it. But I think that you have to listen to something at least twice. The first try, even with a band that you're familiar with, whenever they come out with a new album, I'm always like, I don't know if I like this. And then I'll hear it a second time and I'm like, oh yeah, I like it.
I mean, that's actually one of the good things about woodworking is that you can kind of put it on and half pay attention to it. And you might be able to get through it like 3 times in a week, where if you were just sitting there focusing on it, it would be really tedious.
That's true.
But this way you can kind of let it like percolate in your mind to then maybe that 5th time you listen to it and you're like, oh, I do really like this song. I remember this standing out. And then an album can kind of grow on you that way.
Who are some of your favorite bands right now?
I'd say I have like contemporary bands, Fleet Foxes.
Oh, yeah.
Vampire Weekend.
I mean, Vampire Weekend's been great for so long. They just recently came out with a new album too. They
like a year and a half ago they had one come out.
Yeah.
There's this one that I've used his music in a few of my videos. His name's Takuyubuki. He's a Japanese jazz pianist. I found his music through Gran Turismo, which is a video game that I really like. He like did some of the menu music, and I eventually found out who made it, and so I like that a lot. And then that's kind of spawned me off into a weird direction of music that I'll listen to from time to time.
Yeah, I think that's what's Spotify. You can get into those kind of discovery modes, and they're getting better at discovery. It's kind of one of the things I don't really remember the last time I listened to over-the-air radio, but it's kind of one of the things I sort of miss about that is that they would just play something you weren't expecting that I wouldn't normally hear, and then I would kind of hear it. Whereas, Spotify is trying to do more of that, but it still kind of feeds you more of what you already like, and it's like, well, I'm gonna try some new things.
Right. Yeah, that is, I guess, something that's gone. It's funny because my kids who are 8 and 3, I'll come home sometimes and they'll be listening to like Kiss FM, which is the local top 40 station or whatever. And it's funny because I can remember listening to the radio when I was little, and you wanted a certain song to come on, and then when it came on, it was like extra exciting.
Right.
But it's funny because now they could just go, Alexa, play yada yada yada, and there it'll be. But they still listen to the radio for that reason, I guess.
Yeah. So in your shop, it looks like are you expanding your shop right now? Or you just recently moved into a new shop, a year or so ago, year or two?
I moved into this shop about 3 years ago, but I was only in a corner of it. And then about a year ago, after Sean had moved here, we took over the whole building. So we did, and we've never quite got settled in. We never quite felt like we were permanent here until maybe 6 months ago. Then we finally signed a long-term lease. So now we are in drastic need of doing some organization here. So we've had that on the list for quite a while. It's just never find the time to get around to it because of projects, and we need it pretty bad though. But yeah,
you got a great new conference table now, right?
I know. That's the one thing that we actually have done is the office. We're getting there on that. We're 75% of the way through with it, I would say.
In your recent video on your other channel, you were testing out whether Amazon's spying on you. Was that real? That you had you were trying to say some keywords like jewelry to see if you would get ads.
So it was real when my wife she got some Tiffany men's jewelry ad or whatever. That actually did happen while we were filming that. But then at the very end, we put a very specific, that was not. We said let's just make something that's, the culmination of everything that we've talked about the past 3 minutes. And we'll put something there for that.
Do you watch a lot of YouTube?
Yeah, I still would say it's probably the number one place that I consume content. Mostly, car stuff, shoe stuff, not a lot of woodworking stuff anymore.
Yeah. I think we're all like that.
I'm kind of burnt out on it usually by the end of the day.
Everybody I talk to who makes woodworking, since I started doing this show, then I've been able to watch a lot more woodworking content, just trying to catch up on everybody.
You got to do it for like research now.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's why I like this guy. Yeah, oh yeah, I remember these videos. Why am I watching these anymore? But it's true. There's just so much content on YouTube, and I tend to use it more for my hobbies, and watch, video essays and things like that are really interesting to me right now.
Yeah.
Do you have any hobbies other than music? Do you even have time?
Not really. I mean, I really don't have the time. Like, I would say my biggest hobby that my most long-term hobby that I've always had was video games, but I just don't have the time anymore to really play them. Luckily, my 8-year-old has picked up the reins and he does plenty of video games, so I can just even if I don't have the time to dedicate to be good and current with them, I can just watch him play them for an hour a night or something.
What's your favorite video game? If you could play one right now, what would you play?
Like of all time?
Yeah. I mean, right now, we're going to stop this podcast and you get to play any video game for an hour.
Probably Gran Turismo. I would say racing video games were probably where I've spent the most time. And if I had to choose one series of games, it would probably be that one. Yeah.
And you really like Nintendo too. And you kind of made an interesting point in your Nintendo Switch about how Nintendo separates itself from
it does.
the other two major platforms. And it was very much parallel with your own channel and your own style.
Right. Yeah. Nintendo's definitely like the more whimsical, we don't have the power and the technical aspects of Sony and Microsoft, but we don't need that because our advantage will be our ingenuity and the properties that they've created.
Yeah. You could go to like a GameStop and see the different sections. You'll see the Xbox and the PlayStation. Yeah. All the covers are all these like dark and guns.
Yeah, it's all menacing.
You go to the Nintendo and it's all colorful and happy and fun.
Right. Yeah, they've definitely carved out their niche and it works for them.
Right. One last thing about your logo.
Yep.
I know you probably asked this a lot, but where did you come up with the design for that and why is it missing part of the glasses?
So the glasses are an O and a U. So that's why it's missing the top part of the one glasses so that it can look like a U instead of two O's. When I was starting selling furniture, I basically just wanted to come up with a name that said something about myself. But the most important thing to me was that it was just memorable so that, if I was at a party or something and, oh, you make custom furniture? I need custom furniture. What's the chances they're going to remember me if I'm like, Chris Salomone Designs? They're probably going to forget that. So if I say Four Eyes Designs, like wears glasses, they'll usually have a little chuckle and they'll be able to remember it. So that was kind of my, I wanted a mental business card, I guess, that somebody could take with them. So that was why I came up with that name. And then I did graphic design professionally for a while. So I've always enjoyed just drawing and doing that kind of stuff. So just played around with a kind of minimalist logo until I found that one that worked for me. And I was like, okay, that's clever enough, good enough. I'll go with that.
You going to still do in-person workshops when everything kind of settles down a little bit? I know you kind of had the brakes put on timing. That a little bit.
Our first one was supposed to be in April of 2020, which was like
good timing.
I know. 6 weeks after everything hit the fan. Yes, we definitely plan on doing it. We are planning for very early next year is the date. So we haven't made any kind of official announcements. We're holding the reservations.
It just says canceled. So
Right. So luckily, most of the people that had signed up to it are still very interested in coming. So we're going to hold all of their reservation spots and give them first dibs whenever we finally figure out the dates. And so we'll do that. We'll get that all squared away. And then hopefully we'll be able to publicly announce it. And hopefully by the time January rolls around, things are safe and everybody's happy to do them in person. And that's the plan.
Have you ever taught an in-person class before?
Kind of. I did a few of those like Rockler meet and greet things. And then at Workbench Con, I gave some talks for the first 2 years of it. So that's as close as I've...
Is it exhausting?
For me, I'm a very nervous, anxious, shy person. So it's stressful in those kinds of ways. But it's very relieving when I would get done with it, because I'd be like, oh, sweet. Now I can just like enjoy the rest of the weekend. I did that part. I think this will definitely have a different vibe than that, because it's not a big audience. It's, 8 to 10 people, definitely more of like a hangout vibe. So I'm hoping it's something that can be, obviously it's going to be busy days, but then it can be fun nights where, we can all go to a local restaurant and just talk and hang out and everybody has a good time. So I'm hoping it's a very different vibe than what those were. And I think that I will be less anxious going into them, though I'm usually anxious going into everything. So no guarantees there.
Well, now you can include that on your new show too. Ask everybody if they want to be on the new show, and they'll sign a waiver.
Yeah. We've talked about that. Like, those will be fun episodes, and awesome. It'll be nice that it'll help to promote. Like, people will get to see more of the environment that actually happens when people are here, which is hopefully actually fun. Yeah. So yeah, it'll be nice to have that.
Where do you see Four Eyes heading, say, in the next 5 years in your business?
I mean, I feel like everything that I've done to this point, so after going full time, then bringing Sean on, now bringing Chris on, starting this other channel, starting to do plans, starting to do in-person workshops. My whole goal has always been long-term sustainability. So I quickly, after going full time, realized like I cannot do 3 videos a month that are project videos. It's impossible. Yeah. There's no way that I can keep doing this, but I don't want to not do them. So what's a way that I can work my way towards doing that? So obviously having a second person here like Sean, who can, if needed, bear half the brunt, something like plans where it's a much less transactional exchange. Doing a project video on YouTube, it's hopefully a sponsor wants to do it. You agree, you get that paycheck. Obviously you have your AdSense that can keep going, but it's pretty much, you finish it, you're on to the next thing. Where plans is nice because it takes way more time to build, and you have to think about things a lot more. And in the time it takes me to produce one set of plans, I probably could have done 4 videos, but now I have something that's of value moving forward and that's an asset to me. So building up a catalog of that, and then hopefully getting to the point of doing, 10 to 12 in-person workshops a year, then I can still make videos, but instead of, maybe I can focus on one really nice project a month. So my goal is to eventually get to that place where it's diversified enough that it's sustainable, and also sustainable from a, mental point of view of having fun while I'm being here, continuing to enjoy while I'm being here. And I think the biggest thing I've done for that is having Sean and Chris here, because it just is way more fun than being here 8 hours a day by myself. So I see it evolving into that place. I feel like we're already evolving into that place. It's just a matter of actually getting there, which is a long-term process. But if we can successfully get there, I think that makes it a sustainable thing that can keep going for 5 years. And then just being happy with, it doesn't need to keep growing from there. If I can keep doing that and it can stay successful and I can pay all my bills and I can have fun and enjoy my life, then that'll be sustainable in my eyes.
Well, I have no doubt, no matter what you do, it's all going to be stamped with that high quality Chris Salomone production, and everything is going to look really nice.
I hope so.
Yeah. Hey, I want to thank you for joining me on the Woodworking Talk Show. And it was a blast talking to you. It's really interesting hearing about all the things you're interested in and all the things that you're doing. And for everybody listening to this, check out Chris Salomone on YouTube. It's called Four Eyes, but I don't think your channel name is just Chris Salomone, right?
Yeah, it's technically, but I think if it's good enough now, if you search Four Eyes, it'll come up.
Just search for like Chris Nintendo Switch, huge.
There you go.
Like
Giant Nintendo Switch.
You'll find him. And you also have a podcast that you've been doing for a long time with Ben, who's on this show,
Mike.
and Mike Montgomery. Yeah, that's the Modern Maker podcast, right?
Yep.
How do you describe that show?
A mix of, I mean, obviously it's focused around makers. Ben and Mike are much more jacks of all trade than I am. They build houses, work with concrete, weld, they do it all. So it's probably more in that vein than like fine woodworking. But then a lot of talking about things that are tangential to, just what it's like doing this professionally. The challenges have become a big part of what we do. Annually, we always do a challenge. I don't want to promise it, but we're in the talks to have another one coming up very soon. So hopefully that'll happen. I won't let the cat out of the bag on what I think it's going to be yet, but yeah.
Well, we'll be
that's
looking
kind of
forward to that. That's awesome. And thank you again for joining me, and for everybody listening to this show or watching it on YouTube. Be sure and follow. I already said that part. I'm cutting that part out. It's a good thing I have the ability to edit on here. See, this is why I need to write an outro, because the outro is the part that I always suck at the most.
You probably feel like, I've built up like an hour of momentum. I'll be able to nail this part.
Yeah. I'm like, I got nothing. Anyways, thank you everybody for watching and listening to this show, and I'll see you next time.